Let's use the secret entrance.
I just realized my mic was muted that entire time. Well, looks like we're doing the intro over again. Alright, Nathan Net episode 33, guys. It's been a minute since we recorded an episode. I've been in the new apartment for about 2 months now. It'll be 2 months, 4 days from the time I record this. But despite that, it's only been my second episode since I moved into the apartment. So yeah, we're a little behind, but it is what it is. So we're gonna go ahead and knock this episode out. Another solo episode, We've had a bunch of wonderful guests come on and everything. And guests are fun because you can bounce off somebody, but I need a little bit. I feel like it would be good to do another solo episode. Just sitting down with you guys and myself, and it's good to just be me and you guys every once in a while. But yeah. The NBA season is starting a week from today, so obviously that's exciting. So that means this will probably be the last Nathan Net before the NBA season starts. With the NBA season starting up, obviously there's a lot of exciting things, more content for me to make for you guys, a lot more stuff to talk about. But there's also other things related to that. Start of fantasy basketball, which I'm excited for. I'm in a fantasy league right now that I've mentioned with me, CJ Hoop Talk, Swish Eel, Clan the Spurs Fan, and a few other basketball YouTubers. So that's going to be really fun. Just sort of a mix of all the Spurs and basketball YouTubers, and we're sort of having a YouTube fantasy basketball. So that'll be fun. I got a lot more videos planned for you guys as well. Again, I know I haven't uploaded in a minute, but it's midterm month after all. But I do want to upload some more during the month of October. And speaking of which, the channel right now is at about 467 subs. So I am trying to hit 500 by the end of the year. I know it's going to be a little bit more difficult since I haven't been consistent. But I really do think we can get it because we are only 33 away. So yeah, I really want to hit 500 by the end of the year, and I'll definitely be uploading more because again, I do have some good video ideas written down. I just need to go ahead and record and edit them and everything. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into some of the stuff I have written down here to talk about before the season starts. So, of course, the biggest one that is on everyone's mind is Draymond Green. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Was what Draymond Green did right? No, of course not. That was a crazy punch. If that was, I saw Kenny do a video on it, and he sort of put it in the terms of, these people are coworkers. If this would have happened in any other business, Draymond would have immediately been fired, because that is assaulting another coworker. There could have been actual legal charges with that, and you would have been fired from your job. But this is not a normal job. This is competitive sports. Trash talking happens. Stuff happens, and Kenny the Jet Smith was actually approached on the street about it, and Kenny, was talking about, people are blowing this up, this happens all the time. It's just not really brought to the public light and everything that often, but it happens on every team and everything. And I know this may be sort of a hot take, and some people may agree with it, but I honestly agree with that. I think a lot of people are really blowing this up, and I saw Shannon Sharp and, Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless is known for sometimes being, crazy and wrong with a lot of his takes. And he was saying, that, Draymond's incredibly wrong for this. This is so out of line for him, But Shannon Sharp was also saying that once it becomes public, it is much harder to deal with. And I do agree with that part of it. Because again, this is nothing new for the NBA. This happens all the time where sometimes teammates will fight. Like I've brought up on the podcast before how Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis were fighting on the bench at one point. And that was just like this last season. Teammates get into fights sometimes, and it's just what happens. And we've seen fights in games before. The biggest one obviously was the Malice at the Palace, and that is different because that's when fans get involved in the fight, and then that was one of the biggest fights in sports. But we see little tussles and everything like that with games all the time. And I really do think this is sort of becoming bigger than it needs to be because of just sort of the public reaction to it. And again, like a lot of people may not agree with that, but to me, this is sort of the analogy that I came up with. You got to think about where this video came from, right? This video came from TMZ Sports, okay? TMZ is known for being, the paparazzi, the drama police when it comes to celebrities. And then in that company, there's this obviously the subsection of TMZ Sports, which does the same thing with athletes and sports and everything like that. And so the best way for me to put it is TMZ was sort of the original Keemstar. Okay, Keemstar obviously is pretty much a universally disliked person on YouTube. He comes out with drama. He keeps up with drama. He likes to call people out. He likes to make things bigger than it has to be because that gets more attention to his videos, And he sort of adds stuff to the story to make it juicier. TMZ is the exact same thing, just on a celebrity scale rather than a YouTube scale. And so people are seeing, this TMZ video and everything, and they're going crazy. But that's exactly what TMZ wants, because that gets more people watching their video, watching the leaked video of it, gets stories going and everything like that. And it's really not that big of a story. And again, am I saying that what Draymond did was okay? No, it was not okay at all. However, again, it's becoming like this huge story. It's the end of Draymond's career. Draymond needs to be, suspended and everything like that. And does this mean that Draymond's going to get traded? Will Poole request a trade? People are talking about Jordan Poole's family's been affected after the video released, and they'll never be the same, quote unquote. Again, it really all it was a punch. And again, it's not okay, but it's not as big as it needs to be. And Draymond actually, I'm not defending Draymond, but he actually had a good quote in his interview by him where he said it's bullshit that TMZ leaked the video, and he said it's bullshit that no other videos get leaked. He was saying whenever he does something good at practice, it doesn't get leaked. Whenever he's a leader to other teammates, it doesn't get leaked. Whenever they're doing scrimmages and all this stuff, and, no videos really get leaked. It's really only when bad stuff like this and like crazy stories happen where they see something bad and they latch onto it. And again, that's what I feel like is happening. People will see a story, they'll spread it around, people will make their own opinions, and it becomes much of a bigger thing. And it's harder to handle it when it is a public thing versus whenever it's handled internally. And Steve Kerr actually said that as well. Y'all are going to call me weird because this is just the first thing that came to mind, And that's the point of the podcast, is we just let thoughts flow. Nothing's scripted or anything. We just talk what's on our mind. But it actually sort of reminds me of the Spider-Man movie where Daredevil, comes in as the lawyer, and he said, you've beaten these charges, but there's the court of public opinion, and public opinion a lot of times is more important than the actual court. And right now, people are seeing Draymond as an enemy, and they are making it much harder to deal with because of their reaction to it. Because again, they're sort of plastering Draymond everywhere as the villain of the NBA right now, when what he did wasn't as bad as people are portraying it. Was it bad? Yes, but I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. And Draymond as well said, this had nothing to do with his contract, and they wanted to handle it internally, which again would have been a lot easier. But even before the fight happened, ESPN was talking about Draymond's contract, and they said that Draymond's contract wasn't a priority to the Warriors at the time because he still had a couple of years on it, and they wanted to focus more on Jordan Poole. And they said that they had to look at how Draymond Green behaved because, to quote ESPN, Draymond has the biggest chance of quote unquote rocking the boat, is what they said, meaning to create turmoil in the team. And of course, team chemistry is important. And so that's exactly what we're seeing now is Draymond just has the character of being hot-headed. And so that sort of came out. And we've actually seen this with other players in the past. Boogie Cousins, he used to play really well, but he was known for, being quick to fouls, being hot-headed and everything. And now he's sort of being passed around to every other team. And we don't really see his name come up that much in the NBA anymore. It seems like every season he's on a different team now. And who knows? We'll just have to see what happens with Draymond. But in my opinion, this is being handled the way it is being handled because of the public's reaction to it. And ESPN has a brand. The Warriors have a brand. Everybody has a brand, and so they sort of have to go with the public opinion in order to, keep everybody happy, keep their viewers happy, everything like that. And I know I'm going against the grain here, but to me, I agree with Kenny the Jet Smith, where Kenny the Jet Smith came out and said, this isn't that big of a deal, and people are over exaggerating it, and I agree with that. And I know people aren't going to agree with me very much on that, but again, I'm talking myself in circles. I think I've explained my stance on it enough already, where it's just becoming a bigger deal than it has to be, because people like drama, people eat up drama, and so they are going to keep this story relevant, and make it bigger as time goes on, because it's exciting for them to have something to talk about with Draymond and everything. Anyway, that's all I have to say on Draymond. As for something else I've noticed recently that I wanted to talk about, I've brought this up in the past before, but injuries are getting really, really bad in the NBA right now. And I want to do probably another video on this separate from the podcast. But injuries are getting really bad right now. And I think there are three major components to it. And they should be pretty obvious. But the NBA is getting older. The seasons are closer together. And there isn't as much downtime between seasons and everything. Ever since the COVID season, we like the NBA has tried to get back on schedule as much as it can and get back to sort of a regular season, because obviously with the NBA being suspended and then coming back, it's not ending at the same time it usually does, and therefore it's not starting the same time it usually does. Now it's starting. It's sort of back on track where it's starting in October, ending around June, July, which is what we've come to expect. But back in COVID, it didn't end until midsummer, um, and so these seasons are much closer together, obviously, and people don't have very much time to rest. And that becomes even more prevalent with things like the EuroLeague, that players like Giannis and Luka are playing in. We had the Olympics, uh, like during the COVID season as well. Um, and along with that, again, players are just getting older as well. LeBron's getting into his 40s. Players like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Chris Paul, James Harden, all of these players that have been vets for very, very long are just starting to get older, and their bodies are getting weaker and easier to injure. And so I don't think that these injuries are going to really stop anytime soon because of that, until we start seeing a few of these players um, retire, um, and that sort of bring in the next era of the NBA, that is Luka, that is Trae Young, that is the people that just got drafted, Cade Cunningham, these much younger players that have just been drafted or drafted a couple years ago, rather than the early 2000s. Like LeBron was drafted the year I was born, I'm pretty sure. Um, and yeah, it would have been the year I was born because I'm 20 and it's his 20th year in the NBA, I'm pretty sure. Um, and obviously, age doesn't help injuries. Your downtime is very, very important in order to prevent injury. If you're going nonstop, that's why in the gym you have to have a rest day so you don't injure yourself. It's the same sort of thing. And that also leads to less exciting games as well, because players do need this sort of rest. And so, in order to artificially create that rest, like an off season, um, coaches are not really going to be starting their main guys at the start of the season. They're not going to come out with these crazy finals starting lineups. It's going to seem for a while that the NBA season hasn't really started yet. I don't think, even though the NBA season starts on the 18th, I don't think we'll see a real true start of the season until probably the first week of November, because these players like Giannis, these players like Luka, that have been playing in the EuroLeague especially, they're going to need their rests. And so they're going to have to sit out the first couple games in order to create, again, sort of an artificial offseason for them where they aren't playing these games. And we're going to see sort of these first few weeks look a lot like preseason almost, in my mind, because again, these players are going to need to sit out for the first couple games because they have not sat down for an extended period of time away from basketball. I keep bringing up Giannis and Luka with the EuroLeague. They have been literally playing basketball the entire year round at this point, because they started last season in October. Giannis went all the way to the playoffs with the Celtics. The Celtics knocked him out, and then he immediately goes into the EuroLeague. He's playing the EuroLeague. The EuroLeague only recently just ended, like a couple weeks ago, and now he's resting a little bit, and now it's preseason, and the NBA season is going to start again in a couple weeks. There has been no real break for these players. There has been no off season for them, and so they're going to need their rest, and there is going to be more injuries this season, and there are going to be more injuries the season after that. And unfortunately, it's just going to continue until the NBA figures out a balance between FIBA and the NBA, as well as sort of the break between seasons, because we have been trying to start the season back at its usual time while getting out at a later date than usual. So the off season is also shorter in itself because of that. But whenever we start getting more of these younger players through the draft and less older players, that age will definitely, the younger age of players will definitely help prevent those injuries and everything. But that was just a trend that I saw that I wanted to comment on, and the last couple things I have on here is I wrote on here, I call in my notes, I called it the Kobe documentary. It's technically not a Kobe documentary, but in a way it is. The Redeem Team movie or documentary or whatever you want to call it on Netflix called The Redeem Team. So this is a production made by Netflix, or at least hosted on Netflix, that talks about the Redeem Team of the 2008 Olympics and everything. And it really goes to show, they talk about the USA team for like the first half or so, I would say. And then after that, it sort of talks about Kobe joining the USA team and how he took over as a leader. And it shows how much he was a leader and how he sort of brought his Mamba mentality to the rest of the players and how great he was and everything. And I really do think it does Kobe justice, and it shows sort of the mentality that he went in with, the mentality that he brought to other players. But more importantly than that, to me, that I saw in there, it addressed the relationship of international players in the NBA and everything like that. And that is something I want to do more videos on. Swish Eel has done a bunch of videos on it. And I will shout out Swiss Eel. Again, great friend of the channel, makes amazing videos. I might leave his stuff in the videos I'm specifically talking about in the description. I'll definitely leave probably a link to his channel or something. But he does some videos about international players around. I think he does it to the late 2000s. But we also saw another surge of international players in the early 2000s, and also sort of around the 90s when with the Dream Team. Because basketball is one of those sports. Basketball is one of those sports that started. I just lost connection to live, but I'm still recording, so I don't know if this will be in the VOD, but it should be in the recording. Sorry to go off track there, audio listeners. I record these episodes as well as stream them, so in case I lose connection to the stream like I am now, I still have the recording. So anyway, Dream Team international play. The sport of basketball was created, everybody knows, in Naismith, or Naismith, however you want to pronounce it, up near Boston, and because of that, basketball was an American sport for a while, and the greatest basketball players came from America because it was where the sport originated. But as we played in the Olympics, as people watched the NBA on TV internationally, it became a much bigger and bigger sport. And the Dream Team actually helped sort of revive the NBA in a way, because I'm sure you've all heard, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird saved the NBA because they were getting low views and the rivalry brought in more views and everything. Same sort of thing. The Dream Team helped sort of broadcast the greatness of American basketball to the entire world, and brought more of a global image of basketball to the world and brought more views to the NBA. But that had the cause and effect of bringing in more international players, which brought more international competition. And we started to see Team USA losing in the early 2000s. Because, again, we were getting people like Manu Ginobili from Argentina, Dirk Nowitzki from Germany, etc. And that is something I want to do a video on because I've talked about that plenty of times, and it's a much more in-depth topic. Recently we've had Rudy Gobert, Giannis, Luka, plenty of these international players, and it's just it's cool to see sort of the evolution of basketball overseas. And again, Swish Elis already sort of dived into that, so I'll leave a link to his videos. But I do want to do a separate video on that. The last sort of thing I have on here, I know it's sort of a short episode, but again, as you could have probably guessed, the shorter episodes are going to happen whenever it's off season, but there's still plenty to talk about. So Victor Wembanyama. I have talked about Victor Wembanyama plenty of times before, and I am very, very excited to see him play on an NBA level. Obviously, I want it to be on my team. Obviously, I want it to be for the Spurs. The Spurs are in tank mode right now, and I really do think he can revive the Spurs, because he is the most hyped prospect since LeBron, and for good reason. Their NBA on ESPN sort of did a story on him after his recent games, and they said that he excuse me. They said that he could be the greatest of all time, surpassing Jordan, surpassing LeBron, surpassing Kareem, Larry Bird, whoever your GOAT is. Victor Wembanyama will most likely be better than them by the end of his career, because he really can sort of do everything, and that is why everybody wants to draft him. And what do I mean by he can do everything? Well, I mean he can do everything. In his recent game, he had 7 threes, 11 rebounds, and 5 blocks. And that is because this man is 7'4". But again, despite being 7'4", he hits 7 threes. Usually we don't see that many big men shoot threes or anything crazy like that. They usually play in the paint, obviously. Giannis plays in the paint. Rudy Gobert plays in the paint a lot of the time. Shaq was dominant in the paint way back when he played. It's sort of an unwritten rule, of course, that a forward's and a center's spot is going to be towards the key rather than beyond the arc. And that's obviously the whole front court, back court terminology. But Victor Wembanyama is sort of playing as a point guard at 7'4", which is crazy to see, because I've talked about plenty that the size of the NBA is shrinking, and players are getting shorter and shorter over time, and people are shooting more threes, and again, people are getting shorter and shorter. And Victor Wembanyama is sort of destroying that curve, because that is his biggest strength. He is turning the height of these new NBA players as they get shorter and shorter into one of their weaknesses. Because even tall players, like they brought up LeBron again, LeBron 6'7", Wembanyama 7'4". Um, they talk about height is something you can't teach. Of course, the meaning behind that goes without saying. Um, Giannis at one point said in an interview, we could see in 2045 every player looks like Victor Wembanyama. I don't know about that because, again, height is genetics. Height is something you can't teach. But we could see sort of that curve go in the opposite direction that it has been going, where players have been getting shorter and shorter. They might start getting taller and taller again, because the most important and most versatile tool that a shooter can use is creating space. And so a lot of point guards, they create space whenever they shoot, either by their teammates or their dribble abilities or what have you. Steph Curry creates space with screens around him with, again, people like Draymond. And, players like AI would create space with his handles. Kyrie Irving creates space with his handles. And players like Harden sort of do the same thing, do with their handles. He's got that step back, and, there's some fouls involved in silly play, but I won't get into that. But needless to say that these point guards create space in their own way by doing something creative with the ball. Victor Wembanyama doesn't really need to do that, but he can if he has to, because he does have handles. He's able to sort of dribble around people like a point guard and get his space that he needs to horizontally, like these point guards are doing, creating space, horizontally on the court. And Victor Wembanyama is changing the game, and as ESPN put it, they said changing the geometry of the game, because as NBA fans, as NBA players, as NBA coaches, I feel we have been thinking of the game sort of in that two-dimensional way. Is we NBA players create space by moving around the other players against defenders, and then sort of creating space in order to shoot. And Victor Wembanyama is not doing that. Victor Wembanyama is creating space in a 3D way, in a three-dimensional way, with his height, because he is 7'4", and he is basically shooting over everybody else. Because not only is he 7'4", but he has a very, very high release. And so no matter if you put, again, LeBron at 6'7" on him, he is going to shoot over LeBron, because he's 7'4" to begin with, and then his wingspan is so high that he just again, they put it like he's shooting in the gym by himself. There is no opposition that you can add to that. He is creating space simply because he is that tall, and he is creating space where there is no contest to his shots, and he just has to simply jump and put it up, which is why he is able to shoot 7 threes in a game despite being at his height, because all he has to do is simply jump and focus on his shot and not really have to worry about who is guarding him. He can just jump, release, and it goes in, because he is creating that space for himself by being that tall. And Richard Jefferson says this is the scariest thing the NBA has seen. And they even said that had Victor and LeBron been in the same draft class, LeBron would have been drafted second. That is how crazy good Victor Wembanyama is. And it's just crazy if you go and watch highlights, because, again, there is no one that can really defend him. He is just shooting over people. Um, because he has this not only is he 7'4", he has this high vertical, high release, high wingspan, and there is no one really stopping him. And so obviously I really want to see that on the Spurs. I've done a video about how Victor Wembanyama fits on the Spurs, how he'd be perfect fitting in with the strengths and weaknesses of other players that the Spurs have already drafted. Um, and obviously, I just want to see the Spurs succeed, and Victor Wembanyama would be really good for that. If he went to another team, I would be really disappointed because, again, that's one of the greatest players of all time going to another team. But I would just be very excited to see Victor play in general. Um, but this really will create a different precedent in the NBA because, again, we've seen players get shorter and shorter, and now the league is so short on average that nobody will really be able to defend him. So we'll have to see how teams sort of create defenses or create strategies against him. And right now, I really don't think there is because, again, you can't teach height. You can practice your vertical. You can make your vertical better, but it still isn't going to be enough to really stop him. And so, you know, it's sort of the inverse of Shaq. Shaq was so big and dominant that, you couldn't really stop him because he sort of just charged through everybody and used his muscle and his weight and his frame to just go through everybody, again, horizontally. And Giannis does the same thing, and nobody is really stopping Victor because he is going vertically more than anybody else can. And so there is no way to stop him because that verticality will always be better than anybody else. And I don't know what else I can really say on that because, again, it's just you have to see him play. You have to look at how tall this man is. He ducks to get through metal detectors. It's crazy to see. And it'll be interesting to see how he works on each team. And I'm definitely going to do more videos on Victor because, again, this is one of the greatest players we've ever seen. But anyway, I know it's a little bit under an hour. Usually, I try and keep the episodes up to an hour for you guys. But that's really all I got for this episode. So I'll have more videos coming out soon, obviously. Excited for the season to start. I will have more to talk about with you guys here soon. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next episode. Again, be sure to subscribe, all that cliche YouTuber stuff, like and share the video. Trying to hit 500 subs by the end of the year. Go check out the stuff on Spotify. Check out the Instagram. All those links in the description. All that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next one. Nathan Burnett, episode 33. Hopefully episode 34 here soon. But we'll see what happens. Yeah. See you guys in the next one. Nathan Burnett, episode 33.